Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first episode of All Things Bourbon, and we're so glad you decided to watch us. Please be sure at the end of the video to like, or during it, like and subscribe to our channel. This has just been a really fun last several months. We stepped into a hobby with bourbon, and so my name's Joel McCrary. It's my wife Tammy. And we're so glad to be here and doing this. This is just something fun we decided to do to share our experience with bourbon. It is really, this is probably our first hobby we've ever had. So,
besides kids and travel.
Besides kids and travel, this is our first hobby we've ever had. So, right into this, our All Things Bourbon, this has really been a journey. And we have an email address, Journey to Bourbon, but it's really started with me. I've always been fascinated with distilling. I've been in oil and gas my whole career and know a lot of stuff. Not as a chemical engineer, but as a safety guy, working in oil and gas, and have been around refining where crude oil is distilled into gasoline and diesel. And various other products, but I have been fascinated in the distilling of grains into alcohol, and it all started really with rum, and rum has been my go-to drink of choice. We've toured a couple of rum distilleries. One was in Jamaica on vacation one time. Went to the Appleton rum distillery. We also we toured a distillery in Key West, Florida. That was a rum distillery. They were the first legal distillery in the Florida Keys. But we've also toured moonshine distilleries in Tennessee, and I've also, probably like you, enjoyed a lot of the reality TV shows around moonshine and distilling, and have just been fascinated by it. But what got us started on bourbon was I watched a documentary on Hulu called Neat, and many of you may have seen that, but I never really liked the taste of bourbon. But that bourbon, when I tasted it, was always mixed with a Coke or a Diet Coke. And I absolutely hated that flavor. So I watched the show Neat, and I said, you know what, I'm going to give bourbon a shot. And I started with a really affordable bourbon called Jim Beam. And everybody's heard of Jim Beam. But it's amazing to me the difference in the flavor of straight bourbon versus mixing it with something. And so I just... I thought I'd give bourbon a try after watching that show Neat, and it has really started something that has just piqued both Tammy and I's interest. And tell you guys, it blows me away how she's gotten interested and excited in bourbon too. So
I'm a non-drinker. For the most part, sweet tea is my go-to, and so for him, he always loved those shows, and I thought it was interesting, and the process and all that, but I didn't really get into much of it. And he's always tried to get me to drink coffee, tried to get me to drink coffee. Most people love coffee. I don't drink coffee. Just anything to drink with him and just relax and take the edge off. And so after we watched the Neat thing and started going to Kentucky, which we'll get into later, there is a difference if you know how to taste it, like the smelling it and swishing it around in your mouth. And I actually find myself enjoying it, where at first I thought it was terrible and that somebody was trying to poison me. So ladies, or any men out there, if you haven't tried it the correct way, then there are some correct ways to do that, and we may address that today or in another issue. But anyway, you can learn to really enjoy it.
So after watching the show Neat, we started looking online at the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, and unfortunately, when we started looking at that, it was because most of our other trips that we had planned, we love to travel. Most of our other trips we had planned just weren't working out because we're right in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, and there was so many restrictions everywhere, and those restrictions transferred into Kentucky as well. And so we looked at going to Kentucky, doing some distillery tours, but everything was shut down because of the pandemic. And I know that's the same story you guys have with this pandemic. And so finally in 2021, the restrictions were lifted, and we were able to book our first trip to Kentucky, and we made our first visit to Kentucky in October of 2021, and really we started our collection. We never thought going to Kentucky was going to start a hobby of collecting bourbon, but
going to see a few horses and see a few distilleries and come back home.
Yep. And we just, I tell you, we went to Kentucky the first time, had never been there, and we fell in love with the state. It is absolutely gorgeous. There's rolling hills, there's horse farms, there's running water. It's a beautiful place.
Even just their black barns and their buildings.
Yeah, the black fences, and just the history behind Kentucky is amazing. Since that first trip in October of 2021, we've been back 3 times, and it's May. This is Memorial Day weekend, but we've been back to Kentucky 3 times, and we've been learning ever since. There's so much to learn about bourbon. There's so much to learn about the history of these distilleries in Kentucky, and it's truly an American craft. We were raised Baptist in a home that absolutely was anti-alcohol. Most of the people we know are Southern Baptist, and they don't drink, right? But we discovered bourbon, and it has been just a fun ride. But guys, we're still green in this. We don't know much at all about bourbon, but we're super interested in it, and I know there's probably some folks online here that are really interested too, and are just wanting to learn.
Yeah, when we just start talking to friends that they're like, what? They don't, whatever age they are. So many people think it's just I don't know why, but like a throwback, like a tequila or something. And the other day it was like, no, you just sip it, and it's not I guess you could drink too much, but for the most part, it's just to sit down and enjoy, relax, and have a good time, and taste some different flavors, and visit with whoever you're with. So
it is. It's something that you can hold in your hand. I think it's much healthier than a cigarette, but you can sit and you can talk about the bourbon. You can talk about life. You can savor the moment. And I think that's the thing I learned from the show Neat, when they're interviewing a guy named Freddie and he's at Buffalo Trace Distillery, talking about just sharing the experience and taking your time. And so, guys, we're just that's what we've discovered, and I think there is a lot of quality to life just slowing down and chilling with a good bourbon in your hand, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on a good bourbon. We've discovered that, but
we're too cheap to open the expensive.
Yeah, that's right. We have bought some more expensive bourbons, but
And when we're saying expensive, we're saying we've spent.
It's a struggle to crack open those expensive ones.
$30 to $300.
$30 to $300. That's been our range. There's more expensive ones out there if you want them, guys. But we're kind of just easing into this slowly. So we went to the Noah's Ark, and then after the Noah's Ark, we just Googled on our phone the closest distillery to us, and it was Boone County. And that's in northern Kentucky. It's actually in Independence, Kentucky. It's just south of Cincinnati, Ohio.
It's a craft distillery?
It's considered a craft distiller, but it is on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. And so this was our first bourbon distillery. And
they're very nice there.
yeah, they're super nice people. And we just walked in. I don't know how
in the morning.
how busy they are now. But you know, I don't know if you'd have to book your tour now, but
yeah, they had some filled up, but they had an opening.
But they had an opening for us to walk through, and their thing is that their bourbon is distilled by ghost, and so that's kind of their story behind the distillery. They actually reopened the distillery or had their first release of bourbon in 2015. But we stopped and we toured the distillery. We bought a bottle of their pot stilled bourbon, and we also bought a bottle of their rye whiskey, which you'll find at all of these distilleries. You can get bourbon and you can get a rye whiskey. Typically, a lot of them will have other products you can get.
And to be honest, at that point, we didn't know that all bourbons are whiskey, but not all whiskeys are bourbon. So now we know that, but at that point, we did not know that.
So we'll get into mash bills a little more in the future in our videos, but this one is a good bourbon. The mash bill is 74% corn, 21% rye, and 5% malted barley. And guys, we are newbies to bourbon. We've been drinking bourbon now for probably 6 months, and I won't ever claim to have a real sensitive palate, and I bet a lot of you on the other side of this video are the same way. But I don't get into all the notes that people will talk about. I can tell a sweeter bourbon versus another one. I will tell you, I know what bourbons I like, and I know not necessarily what I dislike, but what I like better than others, what I prefer. And so it's just a really interesting deal. But you look at the color here, it has a really good color. That dark brown color shows that it is an aged bourbon. It was put in a charred.
And you said it's a high rye.
Barrel. It is. It has 21% rye, so a lot of times that could make it a little spicier. I
don't think it's spicy then.
But let me.
So once you looked up the mash bill, we haven't gotten where we've spent a lot of time trying to distinguish the flavors. We just kind of talk about whether we like it, whether it's smooth, whether it's sweet, whether it burns, whether it leaves a pepper taste. Those are kind of how we talk to each other about it, or other people that we meet in different places. So we haven't really gotten the caramel, vanilla.
Yeah, I don't. You'll hear a lot of people talking about the fruities and the nutties and all that stuff. I don't.
We believe them.
I believe them, but I just don't know.
We're not there.
Our palate isn't that sensitive to pick that up yet. Mine isn't anyway.
I wouldn't say, or we just don't.
Or we don't know what we're tasting. So that's where we're at.
Anyway,
but you can see some of our collection behind us. This has been a really fun ride, and we have a lot of fun going together.
The distilleries, the horses, the people.
Absolutely.
The people that make it, that talk to us about it, just even going into liquor stores and looking for it, meeting new friends, and just.
And you know what, guys? I'm getting to hang out with my best friend, and it's wonderful that my best friend is enjoying this right along with me here, and so we're glad to do this. Hope you enjoy the ride with your bourbon hunts.
And we'll try to get better at making videos.
And we're hopefully we get better at this. But please, if you like what you saw in this video, please like it and subscribe to this video.
We'll start talking more about bourbons and what.
That's right. We're going to learn as we go, right along with you. So enjoy the ride. Talk to you later.